From your perspective, as a coming up through the ranks of free market establishment Republicans, what was your takeaway from this interview with a government official who also came up through those ranks in a very similar way and is now moving in this direction?
Well, he very much makes this to be a local affiliate decision, and he really disputes that his commentary on this, which has been obviously circulating for the last several hours, had anything to do with it at all. He says Sinclair and Nexstar, they have these affiliates, and they're getting complaints, and they have to enforce or look out for what's called the public interest rule at the local level. They have the FCC broadcast licenses. Also in the interview, he sort of educated people on the difference between broadcast stations and cable stations, but he has no love for these national programmers that put out these programs, and he seems to be really tilting towards wanting more power in the hands of local affiliates who have to deal with the fallout when things like Monday night happened.
He also mentioned that it could be worth it to probe The View. I mean, I think a lot of people heard that as kind of a not so subtle, hey, keep your eyes open here, I'm watching this. What did you make of it?
I asked him if there were other programs that were bothering him in the way that the Kimmel program was on Monday night. He mentioned The View. He brought up this idea of shows being designated as bona fide news shows. And if you're a bona fide news show, you get an exemption. You don't have to do equal opportunity. And so he said, I think it was worth looking at whether they actually qualify as bona fide news shows. But I had brought up The View, but I also asked him about Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers, who are on MAC, because President Trump has mentioned those shows. So I gave him a chance to opine on that, and he was, I think, talking out loud a little bit about this concept of whether shows should be able to maintain the designation of being bona fide news shows.
The president today, we were talking earlier about how he went further. He's kind of said the quiet part a lot louder than kind of the process and government operational view that was conveyed to you on the show from the FCC chair. He said, I read someplace that the networks were 97% against me. They're 97% against. They give me wholly bad publicity. I mean, they're getting a license. I would think maybe their license should be taken away. I don't play this game as often as perhaps a lot of people do. But it does raise the question, like if a Democratic president said that about a conservative network, how would people respond?
Well, I actually asked him about, do you feel like this is pressure coming from, a conservative administration? How should conservatives be reacting to this? And he went and rattled off a number of examples where previous Democratic administrations had used their influence and power and leverage against what were perceived as conservative outlets. So he didn't really, have much to say to that particular argument. Regarding the marketplace, President Trump mentioned the ratings today of Kimmel and said that's primarily why he got fired. Carr brought that up as well as part of the overall business decision. He said, we're in a marketplace, the ratings are bad, the network affiliates have, things to say about this. These network TV stations are, the local guys are facing very big financial pressures right now. These late night shows may not be working for them, and they're losing money, they're under enormous pressure. And of course, at the same time, they're having to lay off people like, local journalists. And so one of the arguments I expect to hear being made is that if you allow these local TV stations to do something more profitable at night, they may be able to actually make more money and keep more local journalists on the payroll. So there's a lot of things at play here, but it's all around the idea that the local guys need more power and the marketplace needs to be respected. And that's really where I think Brendan Carr was coming from today.
Can I follow up just real quick before I let you go? The point you were making at the start of your answer there, which was he kind of rolled off a number of examples that he cited related to what Democrats had done to conservative-related entities in the past. There has been, I think, a post from X that's been circulating in 2022. He tweeted, the political satire is one of the oldest and most important forms of free speech. It challenges those in power while using humor to draw more people into the discussion. That's why people in influential positions have always targeted it for censorship. The point you made, or that he was making to you, about examples that he had seen targeting conservatives up to this point, how important do you think that is to his decision to kind of take a more robust path here?
Well, he rejects that he's doing anything new or that they're actually taking any action. He firmly puts this on the affiliates and the owners of the affiliates, Nexstar and Sinclair, and he believes they should have the power to push back on these network programmers. That's number one. I did read his quote back to him. I also read the quote from Jimmy Kimmel. I said, is this what you found objectionable? And he said, where's the joke? You know, this wasn't satire. He doesn't believe Jimmy Kimmel was making a joke when he went on television, and I think lied about, implying that this shooter was, part of the MAGA movement. And so, you're hearing that from a lot of conservatives today, frankly. They didn't see Kimmel's commentary as jokes or satire. They saw it as a willful attempt by someone on the left to mislead the American people about the motivations of the shooter in a case, obviously, that's getting worldwide headlines.
Scott Jennings, appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to bring in CNN media correspondent Hadas Gold and CNN political director David Chalian. Hadas, I want to start with you. Late night, Scott made this point, hasn't exactly been thriving for a few years now. Jimmy Kimmel's contract is set to expire soon. To the point that has been made by the president, by the FCC chair, this is business. This is an economic decision. How much of an economic reason do you think was behind this?
I mean, well, listen, when some of the biggest TV station owners are saying they're not going to run your program, you're going to lose a lot of advertising dollars. And according to iSpot TV, which tracks some of this, they said that last year Kimmel brought in something like more than $76 million worth of advertising dollars. Now, we don't know exactly how much it costs to air and run Jimmy Kimmel. These shows can be expensive. But he also, when you look at the ratings, his ratings have been down slightly, just like across all linear TV has been down slightly over the last 2 quarters. But when you compare him to other late night TV shows, he's doing okay. He's doing better than, for example, Jimmy Fallon is. And when you look at his YouTube subscribers, for example, so many of these clips, they go viral online. He has more than 20 million subscribers on YouTube. But let's be real here. This is not about the ratings. This is not about the economics, at least not in this moment. This is about big business transactions. Nexstar, this big TV station owner, is trying to buy Tegna, another big TV station owner. They need government approval to do so. And in fact, as all this was going on, they were filing paperwork with the FCC saying they were going to file all of their final paperwork by September 30th. This is happening right now. I think National Review's Philip Klein said it best. He said, ABC and its affiliates may have pulled the trigger, but they did so with FCC guns pointed at their own heads if they did not.
David, Hadas makes such a great point here, which is the threat or the potential of what an administration could do, I think has been an animating feature of much of the last 8 months, as we've seen corporate titans who usually have no issue ignoring criticizing any number of things, any administration.
It's having the desired effect, though. I mean, the threat itself is accomplishing the goal for the Trump administration in a whole host of arenas. And I think, looking at how corporations like ABC, Disney, how institutions like law firms or universities respond to this moment, I mean, that's going to be a big part of the history that gets recorded of this Trump administration. The threat, I know, the chairman was trying to say this all happened independent of him. You cannot remove his stated goal, his stated pursuit yesterday from the events that occurred. I understand he didn't take an action, but the threat seemed to achieve what it wanted to achieve.
Yeah, Hadas, just to that point, and the idea here is that he has the power. He has made clear that he has a really key lever of power here. He's made clear he is willing to utilize it in a way it's never been used before, but the way the law is written, he probably can. That's not nothing here. That has to weigh in on these decisions.
I just find it so funny. I mean, it's like walking around, I don't know, with a weapon and saying, well, I didn't use this weapon against you, but you're standing there and you're looking at the weapon and you feel very, very threatened about it. And there's a lot of these business deals. We've seen it happen already with other major networks who feel very threatened, and then they end up settling or they end up doing other things. I mean, look at Skydance and Paramount and CBS, what happened there. It is very kind of funny and ironic to hear him saying, well, there's no action related here. And you just look down the timeline of what happened, what Jimmy Kimmel said, what Brendan Carr said, and then the actions taken by the affiliates, and it's kind of hard not to put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah, also the emojis that he kept sending media reporters last night celebrating what had happened. Like, come on, this is, like, we know. Like, it all lines up, whatever he says. All right, Hadas Gold, David Chalian, thank you guys very much.